Okay, in this lesson, we will learn about the power of broadcasts, specifically video and audio messages. This will emphasize what we learned at the beginning of the course about all media messages being constructed. In addition to showing examples of this concept, we will briefly discuss the history of powerful messages, particularly the famous War of the Worlds broadcast. Make sure you pay attention to this section in your readings. At any time you want to slow down the slides, you can push the pause button and then continue at your own pace. Let's watch these two videos. Think about what they are about and how they make you feel.
Childhood dream.
Look how high I go. And she's in the army for a living.
One of those kids that knew exactly what they wanted to be when they grew up. I was going to be a pilot, darn it, and I was going to fly large aircraft.
She's in war.
In my first tour, I was the VIP commander for General Odierno and spent a year-long tour. There's a small amount of trepidation that goes with going back into a combat zone. Much less than the first time. This time I know exactly what to expect.
I think that she's not dying. Also, I don't mean to say that, but I don't think anything's happening to her.
The safety piece is always there, whether we're in Minnesota or we're in Iraq.
It's in the middle of not feeling very well and feeling that she'll be all right.
He's at a curious age. He's at an age where he can ask hard questions and connect it to what he sees on TV.
Trust in Mom. Trust that she doesn't, nothing happens to her. Let's just say it that way.
I remind him that Mom's gone there and done this before and came back just fine. And she'll go and come back just fine this time. Rough because there's no guarantees. Childhood dream.
Look how high I go. And she's in the army for a living.
One of those kids that knew exactly what they wanted to be when they grew up. I was going to be a pilot, darn it, and I was going to fly large aircraft.
She's in war.
In my first tour, I was the VIP commander for General Odierno and spent a year-long tour. There's a small amount of trepidation that goes with going back into a combat zone. Much less than the first time. This time I know exactly what to expect.
I think that she's not dying. Also, I don't mean to say that, but I don't think anything's happening to her.
The safety piece is always there, whether we're in Minnesota or we're in Iraq.
It's in the middle of not feeling very well and feeling that she'll be all right.
He's at a curious age. He's at an age where he can ask hard questions and connect it to what he sees on TV.
Trust in Mom. Trust that she doesn't, nothing happens to her. Let's just say it that way.
I remind him that Mom's gone there and done this before and came back just fine. And she'll go and come back just fine this time. Rough because there's no guarantees.
Now that you've watched the two videos, did you spot any differences? those two videos were the same, except for one difference: the music. The first video used upbeat, happy music, and the second used downbeat, sad music. The first video was about a woman fulfilling her dreams of flying an aircraft, and the second was about a mother leaving her son. But the exact same clips were used for both. Remember, the only difference was the music. The purpose of this exercise was to show how journalists, by choosing music and video, should be done very carefully. But I believe it is a great lesson to help clearly state that all media messages are constructed. A video editor can change the reaction with one simple decision. It's not only the production values, like music, that might influence the way we think about media messages. It's also the context of that message. On Halloween 1938, the Mercury Theater dramatized the famous War of the Worlds story on live radio. They made it sound like a news broadcast that was announcing a Martian invasion. The next slide, you will listen to a clip from that broadcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return you to the music of Ramon Raquello, playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel, situated in downtown New York. And now a tune that never loses favor, the ever-popular Stardust, Raymond Raquello and his orchestra. Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with the noted astronomer, Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on this event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey. We return you until then to the music of Ramon Raquello and his orchestra. We are ready now to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carl Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl Phillips speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through the giant lens. I'll ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides the ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
Any time, Mr. Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Phillips. A red disk swimming in the blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be at the point nearest the Earth, in opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Clayton?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Phillips. Although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced, as a scientist, that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars?
I'd say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
Phillips, I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from the Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems as...
Orson Welles, whose radio program produced the show, said it was their version of a Halloween joke, but about 1 million of the estimated 12 million who tuned in did not get the joke, even though CBS had made 4 announcements during the broadcast saying it was a dramatization. Many did not hear the warning. As a result of the broadcast, about 600 people called into the newly formed Federal Communications Commission. A psychologist who interviewed more than 100 people who had been upset by the broadcast said the reason that many were fearful was the context of the episode. First, it did not sound like a play. It sounded like a newscast. Second, radio has been used for important announcements recently. Oops. Let's go back. There we go. Sorry. Third, radio programs had been interrupted in recent weeks, reporting on breaking news from World War II. Fourth, many of the people interviewed on the broadcast, in the play, were experts like professors. So what do we take away from all this? We will talk more later about the ethics of journalists and other communications, as well as the effect of media consumption. But for now, this lesson should further remind us that messages are not natural. Rather, they are constructed with specific purposes in mind. The way they are constructed can have an effect on audiences.